Pop Isaacs at 6'2", 170 pounds. Solid guard for the Red Raiders this past season. Solid, I say, but not necessarily the most efficient shooter. This past year, he shot 29.3% from beyond the arc and just 40% from inside the arc. You take a look at some of his analytical numbers. He shoots 30% on right break threes. That's 27% of his field goal attempts. His shot form, I put in my notes, it's nasty work. While it does work for Isaacs, it's a little bit of a slower jump shot for a 6'2" guard. He loves to shoot from deep. He hit a ton of deep threes this past season, but 29% from three is just frankly subpar. 30% on right break threes is not great for a right-handed shooter. He shoots 48% at the rim. That's a quarter of his field goal attempts. That's not a great number either. The positive here for Isaacs is he's got a 22% assist rate, which is very solid for a guard, and he's really good off of ball screens as well, just kind of creating there. The other thing I need to note is during his freshman season, he shot a ton of threes, just like he did this past year, and he shot almost 38%. He shot 37.8% from beyond the arc, which is way better than what he did this past year. So he can be a really solid shooter from beyond the arc. He's just, and I don't think ever going to be anything consistent inside, and that's kind of where my concerns are with Isaacs. He's quick. He can distribute the basketball. He's definitely got that in him. He doesn't have an extremely high turnover rate to boot with that as well. It's not something that's like a huge problem with his game. He's a good free throw shooter. He dominated possessions for Texas Tech this past season in his sophomore year. I think he needs a little bit more time to develop, but look at what he did against BYU in the two games that they played. In the first game that Pop Isaacs played against BYU, 32 points, 5 of 10 from inside the arc, 6 of 9 from beyond the arc. 32 freaking points. And then in the Big 12 tournament against BYU, 22 points, 6 of 12 shooting, 3 of 7, or 6 of 12 inside the arc, 3 of 7 from beyond the arc. He went off against Mark Pope. I can understand why Pope would want to reach out to him. He knows that this kid has high potential, at least against what he had on display last year. And I don't blame him. But if we're talking about ranking guards that Kentucky is looking at in the portal, I would not have Isaacs high on my list relative to other guys. That is not to say he's a bad player. I think he has a lot of potential, which is why I wanted to talk about him. Let's get to a player that I am actually really intrigued with, like really intrigued with coming out of Oklahoma State. Not Javon Small, Brandon Garrison. If you don't know who this kid is, he's a former McDonald's All-American in 2023, 6'11", 250 as a freshman. He's a big kid. He's got some physicality to him. He shoots 67% at the rim. That's 2/3 of his field goal attempts. Again, high 4-star, top 40 prospect. He's got solid post work. Doesn't go to it that often. He's in the 19th percentile of post-up scores, but what Garrison was an excellent pick-and-roll, pick-and-pop man for OSU this past year. Love his effort, love his aggression, love his ability to just dominate at different times as a freshman in the PNR, PNP game. He shoots 30% at the right elbow on middies, which is not great. That's 30. That's like, I think a little under 30% of his field goal attempts when he's on the floor. But he shoots 47% at the left elbow, which is quite frankly very, very good especially for a freshman, especially for a 6'11", 250 freshman. He's got a solid block rate as well. He was top 100 in that category this past year. 6% block rate. I think that could go up as he builds more strength. And he worked really well with Javon Small. And again, in that pick and roll kind of game, pick and pop kind of game where he can extend out past the free throw line and knock down some mid-range jumpers from the left side. I like Garrison's game. As a freshman, those numbers jump off the page. If you watch him, you really do get to see just the high intensity, the energy, the excitement. I liked Garrison as a prospect. And I like him even more after 1 year in college. I would love to see Garrison get a visit. I think that Arkansas is also in the running here with Coach Cal. Again, top high-profile recruit. Of course, Cal's going to go after him. But for Kentucky, they need to get this kid on a visit. He's somebody that I would have high on my list. And then the final player I want to talk about here today out of Wake Forest, Andrew Carr. Power forward, not a center for Wake Forest. He would work at the 4 for Kentucky. He is listed at 6'10", 220. He would be a fifth-year senior, and he's got some pretty solid numbers to boot. He shot 67% at the rim. That was a little under half of his field goal attempts. He's got an odd jumper, like an odd load-up jumper, but he shot really consistently. He has some moves as a ball handler. He can body somebody up on a drive to the basket. He shot 39% on right break threes. He only shot 25% on right corner threes, which is not great, but as a whole, he shot 37.1% in his second season at Wake Forest. He spent 2 years at Delaware before transferring to the Deacons. He shot 40% in his final year at Delaware, by the way, from beyond the arc. So the kid has a strap. He can also handle. He can drive. He's not dishing out assists. That's not a part of his game. He's not a big passer, but he's got a pretty low turnover rate as well. He's got a 5% block rate, which is really good for a power forward. He is also just a really interesting scorer off of different actions. So he's in the 87th percentile of post-up scores. He and Garrison, Brandon Garrison, would work really well, I think. He's in the 76th percentile of roll/pop scores, so he's utilized with point guards pretty heavily. That's why he's not an assist man. He's usually being given the ball. He's in the 91st percentile of cut scores. So he'd work really well with another passing big or a really solid passing guard that works well in P&R. So I think that somebody like Javon Small, I think David Coit could work well here. I think somebody like, you could get Jackson Robinson involved here. Richie Saunders is somebody that I think could also work well in P&R if Mark Pope wanted to go get him out of the portal. There are so many different options that I think would work well with Garrison, with Carr. I'd like to see these kids get some visits, kind of get some more things going with them. Let me know what you think in the comments below about these portal players. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Kentucky basketball getting very, very active in the transfer portal. We have 4 players for you here today. We're going to have 4 more tomorrow. Jeremy Roach of Duke, Kobe Bray of Dayton, Aiden Mahay of St. Mary's, and then Great Osabor of Utah State. Let's start here with the 4-year point guard out of Duke, Jeremy Roach. I think the first thing we need to note about Roach is he is just a dog. He was a very good point guard for the Blue Devils this past season. Statistically, we're going to dive into a ton of things, but on the surface, I just want to say this is a veteran point guard that plays like a senior and really took his game to another level in 2023 through the 24 season. Just plays like he understands the offense, what's going on out there, how to execute in clutch moments, and again, statistically took a big boost this past year. In his junior year, we'll start here with those stats first. 13.6 points per game, 3 assists per contest, 2.5 rebounds per contest, while only shooting 42.7% from the floor and 34.3% from deep. Slightly above average three-point shooting, but not great numbers. And then he came back for his senior season, did the 6'2", 175-pound point guard. 14 points, 2.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, while also shooting 47% from the floor and 42.9% from deep, almost 43% from deep, a massive improvement. And he's gotten better every single year in college on top of this. You go and look at some of his statistics shooting the basketball. He shoots 62% at the rim. That's 34% of his field goal attempts. He can really drive. He's excellent off of ball screens. He's also a really good spot-up scorer, which we'll get to in a second. He shoots 46% on left wing threes. That's 16% of his shot attempts. Really solid at the left side of the floor. He's an average mid-range shooter, 32% from the left, 39% from the right side of the floor. He's also an average right wing shooter from threes, 33% there. So he really does his damage at the rim on the left side of the basketball court shooting. Really, really good off of ball screens, but also great in catch and shoot situations as well. He shot 68% effective field goal percentage on catch and shoot. That's in the 96th percentile of all college basketball players this past year. So we're diving into these numbers. He's a really good point guard, just a physical, hard-nosed, understands how to play the game at a high-level point guard coming out of Duke, a very good program. He's a good three-point shooter, has dramatically improved this past year. He's a scorer. He's a distributor. He has a 17% assist rate. He can get to the rim. He can catch and shoot. Again, really good off of ball screens as well. If you watch him, really solid getting downhill and finishing consistently. Just plays like a senior. Spot-up wise, 94th percentile of spot-up scores. So he can catch and shoot off of ball screens. He can spot up and knock things down or drive it to the rim. He is just a very versatile scorer with a little bit of a mid-range game to boot. He could play it with tempo, I think. He can handle the ball. He's very, very smart, has a high basketball IQ. Again, you can just see it in the way that he plays the game. Jeremy Roach from Duke would be an excellent addition. But let me tell you about somebody else that I'm also fired up about. I'm going to talk about him for a while. He may be a reason why this episode runs long today. Kobe Brea from Dayton. Kobe Brea is an excellent, and I mean excellent, three-point shooter. The dude is unconscious from all over the floor. 45% on right wing threes. That makes up 30% of his field goal attempts. 44% on right corner threes. 11% of his field goal attempts. And you're like, that's good, but it's not like Reed Shepherd good, right? 54% on left wing threes, 21% of his shot attempts. Like, okay, that's better than Reed Shepherd. 56% on left corner threes, 19% of his field goal attempts. 45, 44, 54, 56% across the board, which comes out to an average, by the way, of 49.8% from three. He shoots 51% from the floor. And if you thought all those numbers were great, he also shoots 65% at the rim as a guard. 9% of his field goal attempts. The man is built to score the basketball. At 6'6", 175 pounds, the man is insane. I think KenPom actually has him listed over 200, so he's got a little bit more weight to him. And you may say, okay, awesome. Would love to have Kobe. This is the player that I would love to have in the portal the most, because it just screams Mark Pope offense to me. Get this kid on campus right now. Kentucky's contacted him. They need to get this kid. He would be an excellent small forward. I know a lot of us are going to talk about the excitement about Liam McNeely, which I will discuss here in a second. I think he's the best pure shooter in the 2024 class. Brea, alongside him, or just having Brea, period, would really do some major damage against opponents. The only concern that I have here with this guy is that if he's given a larger role, the production may dip. And even if it does dip, it's still going to be pretty good. I mean, if it dips 10% across the board, he's still a 39% three-point shooter, which is still great. That's still very good. Brea was not utilized a ton at Dayton. Dayton had Deron Holmes. They had Kobe Elvis. They had Nate Santos, Enoch Cheeks in their... That's a funny name. In their starting five alongside Brea. And he was utilized the least out of those five players. Used on 14.2% of possessions. Now, he got the third most shots on the team in terms of percentage when he was on the court. But he was not a highly utilized player. They really did pick and choose his spots well. So, if given more tempo, which Dayton simply did not play with, they were one of the slowest teams in the nation last year. If given more tempo, more freedom to shoot, does Brea's statistical production take a dip? And I'd be curious to see that. Even if it does, though, he's still great. Hey, one more stat here. 83% effective field goal percentage in catch and shoot situations. 83% effective field goal percentage whenever he is just catching the ball and shooting the ball, no dribbling. That's the best in the country. That was the best in the nation. I would love nothing more than a Kobe Brea, Reed Shepherd backcourt. That would be beautiful. I would adore that. That I think Kentucky fans would adore that. That would be an amazing outcome for Kentucky. That would be the best shooting backcourt I think we have seen in college basketball, maybe ever. Final player here. Before we get to Grado Sabor, who we've already talked about on the show. Aiden Mahay of St. Mary's. 48% at the rim, 27% field goal attempts, 27% of his field goal attempts. He shoots 33% on right break threes. He shoots 36% on left break threes. He has a 15% assist rate. All of those numbers relative to Brea are, not phenomenal. But if you look at the previous year, statistically, he was a lot better. He shot 40% from deep just a season ago at St. Mary's. He averaged the same amount of points, 13.9 points per game, 2 assists, 2.1 rebounds. Good foul line shooter as well, shot 81% this year. I think this kid has been a little inconsistent on and off during his 2 years with the Gales. But I think that Mahaney, coming into his junior season, he would also be somebody that fits really well into the Mark Pope system, just kind of somebody that can be off ball, that can knock down shots, and whenever he's on ball, I think he can create some stuff for himself. The only weakness here is honestly that aspect of his game. He's 37% effective field goal percentage off the dribble. That's 19th percentile in the nation. That's just straight up awful. Way better as a spot-up shooter. This is somebody Kentucky could use off-ball, maybe with somebody like Shepherd or Brea running the stuff. I mean, Brea was honestly better on-ball than Mahaney would be, just looking at some of his statistics here. So Aiden Mahay, another player that I would not be mad at. Mahaney for 2 years was really solid at St. Mary's, and he could have averaged a lot more points had they if they did not play with literally one of the 3 slowest paces in the country. They played so slow last year. So Mahaney, I think, would statistically take a jump in a Mark Pope system.